Hi, I'm Ernie Conover. Welcome to my shop. Today I thought we'd take a look at an age-old tool, and that is the simple cabinet scraper. They traditionally come in a 3-pack, which the first is what often is called a card scraper or a cabinet scraper. And it is simply a rectangular piece of metal which you sharpen to a burr, not by using an oil stone on it. You do, but the real sharpness of it is a burr you make by burnishing the edges like that with a hard device called a burnish. This is as hard as a file, but smooth, very smooth. So we have the card scraper, and then we have the round end scraper, in which we have a convex radius here and a concave radius here. We can still use the edges like a card scraper, but we can finish off anything that's round and bring it to a smooth, faired surface. Same goes for anything that would have a depression in it. And finally, we have the French curve. When all else fails and you got something really weird to smooth up, this will carry the day. Somewhere along this edge, you will find just what you need to get the job done. I have here a hypothetical situation in which we have a thin 1/4-inch panel in which we have a swale in it, a low spot here. You can see the saw marks here where the saw wandered a little during the milling of this wood. If we were to take this any thinner with a hand plane or a sander, we would risk getting it well under 1/4 of an inch and have a panel that rattled in the door we're making. So the answer is not to plane any more off. I have everything here brought to a nice smooth finish with the hand plane, but I now will employ a card scraper, and I will actually lean it forwards and bend it downhill like that to cut. And I'll cut with the grain if possible, but a scraper will actually cut against the grain pretty good. So let's take a few minutes and I'll show you how we sharpen this item. All right, I have my pattern maker's vise over here that I often use for this job. And I can put this in here. And that's actually, I have those two jaws coming towards each other a little bit here. So it only touches here and doesn't hurt the burr on the other end of this. A scraper is actually never delivered as hard as other woodworking tools. Common chisels and plane blades and things like that are usually around Rockwell 58 to 64 hardness compared to the hardness of a diamond, which is 100. And mild steel would be about 30 Rockwell C. When you burnish this, you upset a corner, which we'll do in a minute, but you can't burnish it twice. For the simple act of pushing hard and burnishing this actually brings the Rockwell hardness up a little in the area of the burr and just under it. So to do this again, you can't just get the burnish out. You've got to take a single cut mill file like this, works best, and I just draw file it like this. You actually use the file like a spoke shave, and you'll see actually ribbons of metal come off of here. And I've done that enough to get under the hardened area. I have a simple Washita oil stone here. I put a little kerosene on it. I'm going to take that and just stone that good, and what I'm doing is bringing that surface up to a nice surface finish that's free of file marks. And I'm going to set it against the face like that. And the same thing over here. I'm going to take a piece of shop towel here and check that out. I've got a nice sharp corner, but I don't have any burr. I don't want any burr at this point. I will now take my burnish and I'll just put it straight across, but then can it about 3 to 15 degrees downhill, depending on your likes. And I'm pushing down firmly, and I'm feeling I do have a burr. You don't want to over burnish, because as you bring that burr out, it'll start to split apart like that, and you'll get a ragged burr. It'll leave a terrible finish. That's about right. So all 4 sides of this are now, all 2 sides of this are now sharpened. I could do the ends too if I wanted to. But we're ready to go over to the workpiece and get the saw marks out of that swale. A gizmo for sharpening scrapers that actually I was skeptical of when I first saw it, but actually works really well, is this tool from Rockler. It's got a file in this side. I prefer that it was a single cut rather than a double cut. And it has a fine diamond stone in this side. Now, for the diamond stone, I put a little kerosene on it to preserve it. And I can just put this down like this and quickly make that perfectly square, because I can hold this surface against it. And then I can turn this over and stone it with this diamond stone that's embedded in there. And then I have an angle right here that I obtain by, looks like about a 5-degree angle. So there's our angle. And our burnish, of course, is right there. And I can come over here and there, put a great edge on it. The Rockler cabinet scraper burnisher, handy tool. Up until 1943, Stanley made the number 112 scraper plane. And this had a quite a bit heavier blade in it. As you can see right here, there's Stanley's logo right in the blade. It's sharpened in a slightly different way, in that we put this in the vise like we did the cabinet scraper. But we're now going to file that burr away by putting the file about 20 degrees in a slope towards that direction. And we'll take our oil stone again and do the same thing. Put it on the face. Get out our burnish about 5 to 15 degrees downhill. And there we go. Now let's take that over And I'll show you how that cuts along with the simple cabinet scraper. Now that we have our scraper nice and sharp on this edge, both these edges are sharp, we can come in here and I'm going to bend this just a little so that I don't leave an edge mark. And and you can see I'm leaving a definite shavings. And I'm taking small amounts of material because you're limited to the depth of the burr here. But you can see that these saw marks are coming right out. Now scrapers are kind of tiring to use because you're trying to bend that. I often wear a pair of leather gloves when I use one. But you can buy plastic and metal devices that you put this into that'll put a little forward bend in it and leave you two nice handles to grip on either side, and it will make using this a lot easier. And I can go around for the final touch, and you can see how that is limited to the depth of that burr, and use the other edge, which is at this point nice and sharp yet, and just remove the last of those saw marks. And yeah, it's not absolutely level across here. It's actually got a low spot like it did to begin with. But we've maintained the thickness of this so that we'll have a panel that doesn't rattle. When we make panels for a door, or even a tabletop for that matter, we're not trying to get something so flat that we can shoot laser beams around on it. It's not NASA work. It's just that when we set our cup of coffee down here on this table, that it's not going to tip over. And believe me, there's not enough of a swale here that's going to tip over. So that's the simple card scraper. You could also, if you had a deeper depression, use this one. And it'll get in there even a little further because it has a bigger radius across there. And we could finally use the round end scraper to round the edge if we wanted to for some reason. So that's the lowly card scraper, but for 21 bucks, a set of these belong in everybody's toolbox. Let's take a look at the Stanley 112. To set this up, we're going to take the sharpened edge and put it forward. And we have a set of wheels here. We'll actually stand that blade a little taller there. And you can tilt this till you find the perfect spot in the burr on this. So I'm just holding this down. I'm going to reach around and tighten that knob, which locks that blade in place. It now won't cut very much, but if I take it, bring that blade down a little like that, I'll now take beautiful shavings with it. These were used a lot in the past, especially for refinishing floors, believe it or not. These will take the finish right off of things where a plain blade is dulled almost instantly by finish. And this induces just a little bit of curve in it as well so that the edges don't dig in. But that's the 112. There's reproductions of it made today. Very handy tool to have in your toolkit. A scratch stock is an age-old tool, and it is a scraper which is made by filing a shape that you desire, usually a molding, and then placing this down and leaning it forwards. I hold this handle on this one out here is a handle. This I made in the 1990s in restoring a piece of Dutch furniture from the late 1600s. It had in the corners a very short piece of molding that had to match all the way around. In both corners it was missing, and the lion's head above it had curtain rings in it instead of the original forged iron rings in it. So I patiently filed this with a vise I carried to the owner's house and filed it. And when you file a shape like this, because you're leaning the scratch stock forward, you actually have to make this longer in this plane than the real molding was. Until when you get it so it'll fit the original correctly, I took it back to the shop and actually made the piece. And here you can see at my bench the process of making that molding. Then I cut out of that piece the two short pieces I made, and I took them back to the owner's house and installed them there. I had a blacksmith forge new rings for the lion's noses, and I heated them up with a torch with lots of big heavy tarps down under it so it wouldn't burn anything, and closed them back into the lion's nose, and the result is a restored piece of furniture. That was a job that was a lot of fun. Well, I've about showed you everything about the lowly scraper, which actually in my mind has a pretty high place in cabinet making, often used for firework to replace bits of molding like I did with that cabinet. A tool that'll get you through tough places. It's a tool that belongs in everybody's toolbox. Thanks for visiting my shop. Please visit again soon.